Hey, hello, welcome. We are here today to talk about a very particular non-negotiable, and I'm excited to do this through the lens of a book club. I'm going to go ahead and bring on my very special guest, Brandin Roa. Hi, Brandin.
Hi, Andrea. How are you today?
I'm good. So
Good.
Brandin is our intake specialist at the Functional Nutrition Alliance Clinic. She's also one of our expert instructors inside of Full Body Systems. And we have this special feature for some of our employees and our graduates from FNLP, our Functional Nutrition and Lifestyle Practitioner Certified Practitioner Program. That's a lot of practitioners. Our
Mhm.
Certified Functional Nutrition and Lifestyle Program,
Mhm.
where we lead a quarterly book club. You lead a quarterly book club,
Yeah.
Brandin. And our book recently was, can you tell us about it?
Our book recently was Breath, The Lost
Breath.
Art, the New Science of the Lost Art by journalist James Nestor. And we read this together a couple of weeks ago now. And this particular journalist has written other books, as well as he writes for some mainstream publications like Scientific American and The Atlantic. And a bit about the book. The book is the result of James' interest in the respiratory system, a curiosity that emerged years ago after his doctor recommended he take a breathing class to help with his recurring pneumonia and bronchitis. He takes us on a scientific journey, so interesting, into the lost art and science of breathing, so nothing that's really new to any of us. And he really brings through our medical history, evolution, biochemistry, physiology, how a reframe on how vital this most basic physiological function is. And truly, his research really illuminated a lot of great takeaways for us. In that even making slight adjustments to the way we breathe can jumpstart our athletic performance, rejuvenate internal organs, help snoring, asthma, and autoimmune disease. Super interesting. And really, he left us with the takeaways that optimizing the foundations of breathing are simple yet powerful. He suggests that we breathe through our nose, breathe slowly, less, and don't forget to exhale. Great
I
book,
love that.
Andrea.
Yeah. So, in terms of the read, I'm wondering if you have favorite things about the book, the way he handled the material, or aspects that he brought into that he highlighted really for us as patients, but also for practitioners. Because, of course, we're going to think about this through the matrix, but we always think about everything through our three tiers
Mhm.
perspective. So, the three tiers to nutrition mastery are, of course, the non negotiables: tier one, tier two, deficiency to sufficiency, and tier three, dismantling the dysfunction. And by reading your notes on the book, Brandin,
Mhm.
I can see how breath is addressing all three of those arenas. And it is a non negotiable because it does that. And we know that. We know breath is important. But what was it that you loved about how this book illuminated that
Yeah.
topic?
Yeah. Well, from a professional standpoint, as a practitioner, he really brought forward the idea that unhealthy breathing habits may be standing in our way of achieving greater wellness. So, there's some things that we may be suffering from, like sleep apnea or poor oral posture, thinking about orthodontia and the formation of our mouths. I won't get into all the details. Those things may not be helped, but there's a lot of unhealthy breathing habits that result from breathing too fast or too much. And that some of these things that happen because of the way our daily life unfolds. So in this case, the lifestyle habits and thinking about those core basics, um, things like work deadlines and the call that we need to take or the nagging brightness of our phone screens, those were all really good aha moments in terms of thinking about these are the controllable things that we do each and every day that are influencing this vital function in our body.
Yeah, and so much it can help with. Before we kind of think of it through a takeaways and matrix perspective, was there anything you didn't like about the book, Breath?
Oh, goodness. Great question. I love this book. We've read a lot, and this is the one where I listened between my vehicle and read. And I would have to say the thing I didn't like about the book is that he didn't narrate it for me. So you
Mm.
have to hear him in the Audible version really change his voice to talk about the different specialists that he saw. I think, if anything, that was what was missing from the book, because truly it was really well thought out and put together, especially how he punctuated the entire book with his story about his experimental breathing through the nose, through the mouth with a fellow pulmonaut, Anders Olsen. And that was really fascinating. But if anybody wants to take this book in, certainly the audio version is a hoot.
Oh, that's so
It was
fun.
something that we don't quite get in the book, but yeah,
Will
it
you
was a
show
lot
the
of fun.
book again, Brandin, just for
Mhm.
anybody who's hopping on? We're talking about a book club that we hosted around the book Breath, The New Science of a Lost Art.
Yeah.
And we're giving a little bit of a review of this book and really highlighting the non-negotiable of breathing, which is also like both obvious and doesn't get enough of our attention. I went through your notes, Brandin, and I wish I could post to the Matrix or show it. I have to figure out how to do that. Little technological problem for me. But just in thinking about the left side of the Matrix, the story, and if anybody just wants to pull up a Matrix, you can go to fxnutrition.com/matrix. That's just a blank matrix. On the left side in the story, as you said, triggering events that impair our breathing would, of course, be sleep apnea and poor oral posture. I'm sure deviated septums and things that are structural imbalances could impact our breathing. Anything else come to mind in the triggers that impact our breathing? I mean, I'm sure there's environmental triggers, lots of things, but structural.
Yeah. Structural for sure. I think the two that they illuminated is that we might have less influence around are the apnea and the oral posture.
And then if we think of the mediators, you mentioned some of them: really breathing too fast, breathing too much, offloading too much CO2, making our bodies have to work harder for oxygen. Those are negative things, negative mediators that impact our breath. Shifting from mouth to nose breathing are good practices. Alternate nostril breathing, key awareness of breath during the day. We have two great podcasts at the 15-minute Matrix. One is number 70, going back with Allison Post, a
Yeah.
favorite, mapping breath, and then also number 184, mapping mouth taping, with Dr. Mark Berhenna, who's one of our favorite dentists in the functional medicine world. So number 70 and number 184, two great podcasts to tune into to learn more about breathing through the nose and breath in general. Before I go into the central part of the Matrix, Brandin, anything come to mind for you there that I didn't mention?
No, other than to underscore that one of those positive mediators is breathing through our nose. And I think that there's so many different schools of thought on how to breathe, but the evidence there is like that positive mediator is we've got to get that nose working in and out for us. That
Yeah.
breath.
Amazing. So I'm just going to tick through the center part of the matrix and then come back
Mhm.
to you, Brandin, for some of your key takeaways. But this is really just from my notes from you because I didn't get the opportunity to read or listen. I see Carolyn said that she listened to the Audible as well. So immune and inflammatory balance, so much there. I did see that asthma can be addressed by nose breathing. So the importance of nose breathing. Chewing informs our oral posture, so that impacts the breath. Mouth breathing equals more respiratory ailments and less oxygen. Do I have that right, Brandin?
That's right. That's
And
right.
then lung size can be impacted and is an accurate marker for lung span. And breathing can help with that and address, sort of be an anti aging element.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Breathing
Um,
aids mindfulness And go
Yeah.
ahead. I was kind of ticking around the matrix, but go ahead with
Yeah.
some of your
Well,
thoughts there.
I wanted to share around that lung size. That was a big takeaway, that it can actually expand our lifespan. And he really got into like the structural part of it. If we're not breathing enough, then we're not using those muscles enough. It's kind of like if you don't use it, you lose it. And it
Right.
starts as early as age 30 that our ability to breathe starts to decline. Our rib cages start to get, the bones start to weaken, our muscle tone changes. And
Wow.
if we can work on that, we can expand our lifespan. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
That is incredible. That's
Yeah,
amazing.
it is
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah, so ticking around, down at the bottom of the matrix, coming back around in the hormones and neurohormones, nose breathing can help reduce anxiety and panic attacks. And
Mm-hmm.
I saw a quote that you shared, which was from somebody named Henderson, who maybe he used a funny voice for, but the quote
He
was
did.
carbon dioxide is the chief hormone of the entire body. It's the only one that is produced by every tissue and that probably acts on every organ.
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
Makes me
incredible.
it made me think about vitamin D and that role of vitamin D. Is it a fat soluble vitamin? Well, yes, but you often talk about its role as being hormone like. And
Right.
to think about carbon dioxide and that, the liberator of oxygen in the body, we think of it as carbon dioxide kind of gets a bad rap. But truly, it is one of the most important parts of good breathing.
Talk more about that because there was more about like carbon dioxide and the importance of carbon dioxide that I saw in the notes and the quotes.
Yeah, well, I think without going back to the book and getting into the all of the details of it all, but really the two takeaways for me were that we need to have enough carbon dioxide in our system to actually push the oxygen off of the hemoglobin that's moving it through on our red blood cells. And so the takeaway was we're going to get enough oxygen. So these things like oxygen bars are kind of really moot,
Yeah,
because without having that deep inhale, exhale, we're not getting enough carbon dioxide moving around in our system to push that oxygen out to oxygenate the tissue. So that's where that too much is breathing too shallow. We're not really maximizing that gas, that carbon dioxide gas.
amazing.
It is
Yeah.
amazing.
So, ticking around the matrix, detoxification, clearly breathing detoxifies the nasal passages and the lungs. So, sort of respiratory detox, which of course is really important here. I'm just going to give an aside that I tuned into the Institute for Functional Medicine's conference earlier this week on post acute sequelae COVID. So, the clinical term for long haul COVID.
Mhm.
And did you get to tune into that yet,
Not
Brandon?
yet. I've
Yeah, I
got it
knew
queued
we
up.
were
Yeah.
chatting about it, but
Yeah.
a lot of what was talked about is the loss of smell that can occur for people who are in that long haul situation. This just makes it really clinically relevant to me because part of what you were talking about with the lungs and the use it or lose it was what they were clinically doing with the nasal passages and the sense of smell and taste, how you might have to use essential oils or pretend that you're smelling something, really conjure the smell just to reignite those nasal passages. I'm simplifying it, but just really understanding how there's so much happening in the nasal
Yeah.
passages. And when we're nose breathing, what we can activate, even from a vagal perspective.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's super interesting. It really makes you wonder, again, if we have enough oxygen in our system and we're not responding, what do we have to do differently, to really change whatever the issue is that we're trying to address through breath, which is an
Yeah,
awful
and
lot.
of course that leads us to oxidative stress, right? Which is a huge factor. I have a podcast coming out next week on oxidative stress, but that mouth breathing, I keep saying breathing, like that mouth
Mhm.
breathing leads to less oxygenation. And we actually get 20% more oxygen through breathing through the nose.
Right. Way more efficient way of bringing in that O2 and nourishing our bodies.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that Carolyn put in breathing through the nose filters the air and delivers temperature controlled air to the lungs. I'm going to wrap us up, Brandon. I'm going to
Yeah.
ask you to rate the book. One of the things that I was thinking about, and I want to hear your key takeaways as well, if there was anything we didn't touch on, but was that breathing is nutrition. I think people think
Mhm.
nutrition is only the food we put in our body, but really we provide nutrients to our cells in myriad ways, and breathing, especially nasal breathing, is one of those ways.
Yes, most definitely. And I think that's it's overlooked in a lot of instances. It's kind of like the sleep piece. It's all of those core basics that we tend to minimize because we think that there's something bigger at hand. And so that takes me to one of my key takeaways that I wanted to mention, and that there is a perfect breath. The optimum amount of air that we bring in at rest per minute is 5.5 liters. And of course, we can't necessarily measure that at home, but the optimum breathing rate is about 5.5 breaths per minute. So a 5.5 second inhale and a 5.5 second exhale. That's the perfect breath. What's really interesting about that is that he offers up a lot of different breathing techniques. And he reminds us, which is so true of functional nutrition and the way that we work with our clients, is that there is no best technique. It depends on the person. What ultimately is most important is that we breathe through our noses. So going
Mm.
back to one of his quotes, how we breathe matters. Breathing is a foundation of health, and I'm quoting here. And if you're not doing it right, you're never really going to be healthy.
Amazing. So again, we're talking about the book Breath. Brandon, if you were to give the book a rating from 1 to 5, maybe the audiobook and the written book get two different ratings.
Oh well, if we're gonna separate them, then I'm gonna give the book like a 4.7, and I'm gonna give the audio version a 5.0. I have to tell you, I giggled so many times driving back and forth to school while I was listening to the audiobook in between. I love a good, like, picking up a paper book, but I thoroughly enjoyed the parts of the audiobook that I listened to. So yeah, thumbs up all the way. Definitely
Yay,
take it in.
awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you for leading our graduate book clubs, Brandon, and for sharing your takeaways with us. So much fun to talk to you.
Thanks for having me. It's entirely my pleasure.